Joining me live for more on this, Peter Jennings, Director of Strategic Analysis Australia. Thanks for your time. Just testing out, I guess, the Chinese, what are we calling it, changing the story, that it wasn't in international waters and also that the spying on exercises. What do you make of that?
Well, China sure knows how to spy on exercises because they do that with our Talisman Sabre exercise every other year. Look, there's only so much spying you can actually do with one helicopter flying off the back of a frigate, which is what Australia is doing at the moment. They are there on United Nations mandated sanctions against North Korea. And I think an interesting angle to this is that, in fact, China is, if you like, protecting North Korea's capacity to send ammunition to Russia. So, you know, both countries are really undermining the international rule of law. And for Australia to be there enforcing sanctions, that's something that we should do, and it's something that the United Nations wants us to do.
So China wants to increase the cost, if you like, of applying sanctions, essentially. That's what you think this is about?
Yeah, I think they're trying to create practical no-go zones around all of their territory.
Right.
Where any Navy, the US, us, any other Navy that thinks about moving into that area has to factor in the risk of dealing with Chinese military assets.
So if we're there anyway, we go, oh, there's some exercises, maybe we can listen in. You're saying big deal. I mean, China makes a pretty obvious example, doesn't it, of always sending ships close at the same time as we're doing exercises. So you're saying, imagine if we reacted by putting flares in front of aircraft at that time.
Well, Australia would never do that, even in a high-risk environment, because we if we're engaging in peacetime activities, you don't threaten other forces around you. When China sends its ships to spy on us, they're using highly specialised ships with listening-in capabilities. A helicopter flying off the deck of one of Australia's air warfare destroyers is nowhere near that level of capability.
Right.
This is a diversion.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
I'd take your word for it. I think it's always worth just sort of putting out there for our viewers to understand any sort of credibility of things. Which brings me to the sort of how relations are. So this latest incident, it's been raised. Would more public and higher condemnation, so-called, dressing down the ambassador, Anthony Albanese picking up the phone and wanting a call, would that send a better message, or that just blow up relations? What's your view on that?
Well, I think we need to move away from thinking that, anything rocks the boat and therefore Australia will always stay below the radar, not making noise, just making sort of gentle discussions with the ambassador rather than dressings down.
So we're too much, have we become too focused, we as in the government, on stabilisation?
Absolutely. The myth of stabilisation, because clearly if you've got the People's Liberation Army firing flares at your own helicopters, we're not that stabilised. This is a dangerous relationship. And I think just pretending that Chinese aggression doesn't matter is not going to get Australia anyway. The only way to shift the dial in terms of how the senior Chinese leadership thinks is to take these problems to them and to do so publicly in ways that they can't deny. And I think
so how do you do that different to what's happening? Because the government says it's been raised through normal channels, diplomacy, defence officials. That's not enough in your view?
All of those comments, the normal channels bit is really a way of trying to make a problem go away. What we should do is actually what the British Chief of Air Force called on us to do this morning, which is release the camera footage, which will be in that helicopter, showing what that chaff incident actually looks like. It's sort of a process of naming and shaming. It's a way of exposing Chinese behaviour for the world to see, rather than being complicit in covering it up, because we want to be part of an abusive relationship where China does the abusing.
An abusive relationship, you feel like that's what we're in, with a focus on normalisation of trade and so-called stabilisation?
I think China is going to take every opportunity it can get to try and push Australia into a subordinate position. And if we don't complain about their bad behaviour towards us, then the one thing I can assure you of is there'll be more bad behaviour.
Peter Jennings, appreciate your time. Thank you.